und herzlich willkommen zu einer ganz besonderen Folge des Fürchten Lehren Podcast, denn heute ist die Folge auf Englisch. Meike und ich haben nämlich einen ganz besonderen Gast, Greg DeLiso, Regisseur, Kameramann, Autor, er macht alles. Ein Filmemacher aus Amerika, wohnte mal in Detroit, inzwischen sogar in LA, direkt in Hollywood, und er ist extra in Skype zu uns gekommen, damit wir ihn interviewen konnten über seinen neuen Film Psycho Ape. Der ist zurzeit noch nicht im Release hier in Deutschland, aber wir arbeiten dran. Ich bin gerade im Austausch mit ihm, dass er den irgendwie auch nach Deutschland bringen kann. Aber die Folge ist in Englisch, deshalb eine kurze Ansage vorne dran. Für alle, die Englisch können, super, hört es euch an, weil Greg ist echt ein cooler Typ. Für alle, die nicht können, tut mir leid, aber nächste Woche geht es dann wieder mit einer ganz normalen Folge weiter. Außerdem muss ich dazu sagen, es gab leichte Audioprobleme. Wir haben auf Gregs Spur alle unsere Stimmen in teilweise schlechter Qualität. Ich habe mich jetzt dran gesetzt und das Ganze so gut es ging rausgeschnitten. Es sollte jetzt mehr oder weniger sauber sein. Hin und wieder gibt es aber trotzdem Überschnitte, wo ich es einfach nicht besser hinbekommen habe, nur dass ihr Bescheid wisst. Teilweise ist an der Qualität ein bisschen was, aber das ist quasi Absicht, weil wir sind halt richtige Profis. Und deshalb würde ich jetzt sagen, danke schon mal fürs Einschalten und ich gebe das jetzt mal einfach direkt weiter an mich selbst in der Vergangenheit, weil diese Folge haben wir etwa eine Woche, ein paar Tage vor der letzten Folge aufgenommen, um auch was einbauen zu können in die neue Folge. Also, danke fürs Zuhören. Hallo Josh. Hello and welcome to this very special English language episode of the podcast. I just did a German introduction, I think, but we're talking in English because we have a very special guest. So Meike is here, of course.
Hello.
And I'm here, but we also have a very special guest who I actually interviewed a few years back for his first big film, for his first, no, it wasn't even his first feature-length film, but it was the first film that got me introduced to him. We have movie maker Greg DeLiso. Hello, Greg.
Hello. Very nice to be here. Sorry I don't speak German, but thank you very much for accommodating and very nice to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And I'm pretty sure most of our listeners will be okay with you speaking English. So, yeah, thank you very much for doing this. We have you here on a special occasion because just last week we did an episode on Splatstick, on a genre, on horror movies, or just like more in general about gore movies, and in this case gore that's funny, that's mostly made to be funny. And you just were part of a project that you sent me a link to, and it's called Psycho Ape, and it's like it's bananas, you could say.
Definitely. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Were you still going? Or?
Yeah, no problem.
So I just wanted to get it started by asking you, so as far as I know, the last time we spoke was Hectic Knife, which is also kind of Splatstick in a way. It's also very over-the-top comedic. And now with Psycho Ape, you're not the director. That's what I got. But you were involved pretty much. Like, I can see your handwriting from Hectic Knife to this one. So what exactly did you do? Because on IMDb, I think it just mostly says a cinematographer, but it feels like you did more.
Oh, I know. I appreciate that. Yeah. So basically, similar to Hectic Knife, which was a movie made by two people, and we just split all the roles up. And of course, I did direct that one. With Psycho Ape, it was really made by three of us. So me and Addison Benek and Steve Albers. Steve plays the ape, and then the title and the concept for the movie was Addison's idea. It's actually a fairly, it's a sad story, but it's in some ways kind of uplifting in a way. So Addison actually was my assistant after I finished Hectic Knife. I met Addison at a screening of Hectic Knife in Detroit, where we're both from, and so we became friends really quickly, and he started working for me as my assistant and helping me promote Hectic Knife and stuff. So I think like around the time that we talked the first time a few years ago when I was trying to kind of promote Hectic, Addison had just started kind of helping out with my projects and stuff. And he had mentioned a movie that he wanted to do at that time called Psycho Ape, which at the time was about a guy in a gorilla costume that just like murders people. But I think he had it even with like murdering them with knives, and it was kind of he really just had like this opening scene and just kind of this open-ended idea. And he had come up with that idea with a friend of his. They had been out drinking one night and just goofing off, and they came up with this silly idea. I think they already had the gorilla costume, and they were just going to make this thing. And so I went through a really horrible personal tragedy 2 years ago when my wife passed away. She was disabled, and I took care of her, and then she passed away from sepsis after a surgery, and I was inconsolable and a real mess, and didn't know what I was going to do with myself and stuff. And 3 months before my wife passed away, though, Addison's friend that he had come up with this Psycho Ape idea with also passed away. And so Addison and I were both grieving. We're about 2 years apart or something. So we're these young people grieving people that close to us in our own age group that had died young. And I hung out with Addison a couple months into my journey of grief. And I wasn't expecting this at all, but he said, "Hey, do you want to do this Psycho Ape movie?" He kind of pitched it to me as like the same style as sort of Hectic Knife, where it was just like my old SD camera from 15 years ago and shooting on mini DV tape and just a tiny crew and just kind of having fun and making this thing. And I said, sure, like, yeah, let's do something. For me personally, I didn't know what I was going to do after Hectic Knife, and I didn't really have, I knew I wanted to make something sort of bigger and badder, if that just in that vague term, like just whatever that means, higher resolution, like bigger budget, bigger everything. And that's where my goals and dreams were. But I was all of a sudden found myself in this horrible grieving situation. And I knew that making a movie with Addison, who was really like fun and easy to work with and stuff, would be this perfect thing, because we could just have fun making something really silly. And but we didn't really have an idea. Like, he had written the opening scene with his friend, which was the slumber party thing, and he got the gorilla costume from his friend's parents, that had the one that had actually passed away. So he kind of rescued the costume and made sure that we had that. And it was sort of this thing that we were going to start making in honor of our lost loved ones. And so I went over to Addison and Steve. They lived together in Detroit. I went over to their apartment once a week, and we would watch terrible like monkey movies and just kind of like be writing and making notes and making stuff up on the fly. And we had we never like wrote a script, but we had like a notebook that was like handwritten in like all the stuff that we wanted to shoot. And then Addison did a Kickstarter where he asked for like, I think a $500 or $1,000, and we ended up raising like $7,000 or something really crazy, which allowed us to then bring on Kansas Bowling and Bill Whedon as the main cast, and allowed us to travel out to New York and kind of do all these bigger things. And of course, $7,000 is like still practically zero when you're making a movie, but it was more than enough for us to not have to put any of our own money into it and stuff. So, sorry, to answer your question. So basically, in my mind, it's always sort of been like, it's Addison's movie because it's his title. It's his like concept that he came up with his friend. It was his like costume. It was his like thing. But really, we basically co-directed it. We were both like working with the actors on set and kind of doing all that stuff. I shot it, edited it, and we both like wrote it together with Steve. And it really honestly felt like a real joint effort between me, Addison, Steve, Kansas, Bill, and this guy Jason Ewert, who was really generous in doing the artwork and the graphics for us for free. And he's out in like Minnesota, so he was never on set with us, but he was part of that family too. And then we had a lot of generosity from just a lot of people that like donated on Kickstarter, or people that kind of were fans of Addison or maybe Hectic and in our little universe, and they traveled out to us and to be in it and kind of donate their time and stuff. So it was really made with a lot of love, but that's sort of how the roles break down on set. It was really sort of like directed by the three of us, created by all of us. But yeah, I shot and cut it, and I think that the shooting and the cutting is really and the writing is where you're feeling the sort of similarities with Hectic Knife, because I definitely feel it too. I've watched them back to back, and they're definitely similar. So yeah.
That's probably it. I'm also guessing that in general in these, like, basically you can count these as no budget movies, basically, right? It's not even low budget, which is usually at least $1 million or something. So this is basically a no budget movie, and I guess that's really, like, there are no defined roles. Like, of course you have to credit something, but really it's probably just like everyone working together a bit, and so it makes sense that way. But yeah, I could totally feel it, the similarities to Hectic Knife. They're both especially in the humor. It's basically the same kind of crass, but also like it's batshit insane humor, and it's really enjoyable. So do you want to tell us what the movie, because we talked about the movie now, and most of our listeners, especially since we're in Germany, so far only know that it's about a psycho ape. So what would you describe the plot of the movie?
Oh God. The plot. I mean, I don't know that there is a plot. I guess it's about, and I use the word about very loosely because I don't know if that applies, but an ape, escapes from the Detroit Zoo and just kind of starts randomly killing people, and then there's this woman named Nancy Banana, and she has an encounter with the ape as a teenager, and for whatever reason the ape leaves her alive and kills all of her friends, and we don't really say why, but I guess it's sort of assumed to be her name is Banana, so there's some kind of psychic connection happening. We don't really know. And then it cuts to 25 years later, and the ape is, I guess, still killing people, and then kind of reunites with Nancy, and then it kind of just devolves into a bunch of parodies of famous movies. Some of them ape movies like King Kong and things like that, and other times just random, like there's a whole scene, a parody of Inglourious Bastards. There's like a whole bunch of stuff that's just off the wall. A lot of it just doesn't even really make much like sense. It's one of those movies where it's only, at 65 minutes long, you could really cut probably any scene out of the movie and it would still make as much sense or as little, it would make the same amount of sense. So, yeah. And
there's a long monologue. I kind of, when I saw that scene, I wrote to Meike right away, we have to talk about this movie, and this is crazy because there's one scene where two girls are having you could say discussion, but maybe they're more like fighting towards the end about about which is the better movie, Toy Story or Ratatouille, and I'm guessing that was completely improvised. That didn't sound scripted.
Yeah, so they're really sisters in real life, with a pretty big age difference. I think it's like almost 30, and one of them's like still in high school. The one that liked Ratatouille, and that was like our early days in shooting, and we had a bunch of people at Addison's apartment. This is all like pre-COVID, so it was like safe to just like film stuff, and we'd already filmed this first scene with some of their friends, and then those two girls were kind of waiting to film their scene, and the one younger girl kind of like wants to be an actor and is like interested in filmmaking and stuff. And she was really excited and energetic and kind of bouncing around. And she kept quoting Ratatouille. She kept doing this monologue. And all we knew was that we were going to have trick-or-treaters get killed by the ape, but there was no idea really. And then I just said, hey, well, why don't we, just do that whole line, because it's so funny, because it's so long. I've never even seen Ratatouille, so I don't really know what they're talking about. But I also liked, though, that the specific monologue that she's saying it has something to do with, like, it's a commentary on, like, art criticism. And because I'm assuming that there's a character in Ratatouille that's like a food critic. I don't really know what it's about. I've never seen it,
exactly.
But okay, so they're having this like philosophical conversation about criticism and all this stuff. And I thought that's kind of funny or ironic, because like this scene is so weird and bad, but we're talking about criticism within the scene. And of course, the joke being that it's so long, and I wanted to just do this whole thing of them walking and talking and doing this, and how weird it was. And then, yes, it did devolve into them actually having a real argument as sisters. And when I saw that they were doing that, I just started to, do the cliche where I like wrap the camera around them like a 360, just keep going around. And I love that at one point you can see a guy like smoking cigarettes on his balcony behind them, like listening. And then, of course, it devolves into madness, because like you see Addison at one point and the rest of the crew, and you see the ape without his mask on and stuff. And to me, that was all really, really reminiscent of the bagel scene in Hectic Knife, the way that it just goes on forever and devolves into chaos. And I was really, and I don't want to sound like pretentious about it, because I know the whole point is to make it like a silly thing, but I'm really fascinated by when a movie can, when a joke is that something is like going on too long, and that becomes the joke, and then trying to get a movie to be able to devolve into utter chaos while at the same time still being the movie and still working. And so I think the original cut of that scene was like way longer, and I really love how it flows back into the, because, that whole thing is punctuated by the ape and ends up killing the girl and stuff, and it all goes back to that. And it's actually, if either of you guys have ever seen a movie called Hi, Mom by Brian De Palma, which he did in, I think, around like 1970, or I think, yes, 1970. It's like one of the earliest movies that De Niro is in. And he does this sequence in it called Be Black Baby, where it's like this realistic play that the main characters are like witnessing this play, but then they get like sucked into the play and it all devolves into madness. I was really inspired by that in doing both the bagel scene and this Ratatouille thing. But of course, in that movie, it's all very serious, and I am trying to use it for jokes. But yeah, that stuff like that is a lot of fun for me. That's definitely my favorite scene. It's like it's literally 7 minutes out of a 65-minute movie, so it's like over 10% of the entire running time is this thing. And of course, I love it too because it's the most polarizing, because when people, critics and stuff, write about the movie or whatever, that I feel like that scene is like the litmus test for, are you going to be on board with how insane this is? Because a lot of people are like, that doesn't make any sense. Why is that in there? It's like apropos of nothing. It's non sequitur. And I'm kind of like, well, yeah, this whole movie is a giant non sequitur, so let's have a big one in the middle. So yeah, I love that stuff. That stuff's a lot of fun.
I love it too. For me, actually, I think that was the scene. I think it's pretty much towards the end of towards the middle of the movie.
It's in the middle and it leads you to the end. Yeah.
And that was the scene where I was completely like falling into the movie, and then I knew exactly what was going on. That this was before that. I still tried to make sense of it, and then I knew, okay, just let it flow.
That makes me feel so good. No, because honestly, I mean, I think and I'm so glad to hear you say that, because to me, it's one of those things where you make a movie like this and, only 10 out of 100 people are ever going to appreciate it at all, because it's like so low budget and not about anything and all silly. But of those 10 people that respond to it, it's sort of like they really got to be on board for how weird and surreal and crazy that stuff is. But if it works for them, I feel like it really works, because they really get it and they feel like they're in on something special, and it's a direct link between the filmmakers and the audience in that way, because we're really like winking at the out to the audience, saying like, this is crazy, right? So I really appreciate that a lot. I'm really glad that you dig it.
Yeah, especially in that scene, you actually you actually talk to the audience with subtitles and saying like, we actually we think this and that. And so, yeah, I'm one of those 10% that really enjoy. And I watched it twice already. I watched it once on my own for preparation, and then when I watched it with Meike for preparation for this interview, I watched it again. And it's also a movie that's enjoyable a second time because then there's so much stuff happening that I had kind of like some of the things you only realize once you watch it a second time. So.
Yeah, it's funny to hear you when you say there's so much happening because there's simultaneously nothing is happening. But I fully understand what you're saying, and I really appreciate that. I mean, one thing I'm really proud of about Psycho Life is that I feel like the more, and again, this might sound pretentious, but I'm going to say it, the more cinematically literate you are, the more you will enjoy it because we parody and reference like so many movies. And I think the movie kind of hangs its hat on that because it's really not about anything and it's all about the gonzo silliness. But the more you pick up on, oh, they're doing this, or that's a speech from this movie, or that's a reference to this, I think the more you get that, the richer it all is and the more fun it is for sure. And sometimes it's fairly subtle in that stuff, you know, and it's also very eclectic because you'll have, you know, a movie from the 40s and then it cuts to a modern movie. You know, it's all kind of all over the place. And there's movies I haven't even seen. Like when he picks up that Infinity Glove thing, I don't even know what that is. I've never seen any of that stuff, so I don't understand that stuff. But yeah, yeah.
We had a great time just thinking about, okay, which movie was that from? So it was like we see him eating the cereals, and we're like, something with the milk. We know this one. Which was it? I
love that because that scene, and I'm especially proud of that scene because we had it in the notebook that we just wanted to do this Inglourious Basterds parody, and it all worked out funny because, you know, Kansas Bowling was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and she left Tarantino's set to come work with us and be in our little thing, and so she's acting in this parody of Tarantino, and it's just really funny. But all we had was do a parody of that. We didn't have any script or notes for it, and we had got to New York. We had filmed all morning. We showed up in Times Square because the first stuff that we filmed was the Times Square stuff in New York, and it was raining as soon as we got there, which just made it way more difficult because you got to like cover the camera in garbage bags, and you still have to shoot because we're we're burning daylight. We only got $7,000 in our pocket. You know, we got to make this thing happen. So we're running around in the rain and stealing shots in Times Square, and there's the naked cowboy. Just all this crazy stuff is happening. So we kind of like take a rest in Bill's apartment just to like kind of rest. And I'm thinking like, no, we don't have time to rest. Like we gotta get footage in the can. We gotta like get something. You know, we only have like 8 days to film like a whole feature thing. We gotta like get this. We gotta get something done. So I'm like, what can we shoot here? And I'm like thinking, and I remembered the Inglourious Basterds thing. And I literally, everybody else was kind of like resting and on their phones and stuff. And I just pulled up the scene of that opening scene of Inglourious Basterds on my phone, which is like a 20-minute long thing. It's really super long. And I just watched it, and I started writing what became the scene into the notebook, like freehand, and all that stuff. You know, like I knew, you know, the milk is such a big little moment in that scene, so I was like, well, he should have some syrup, you know, to have the milk, and the Rumors is a great album joke, all that stuff. I just wrote that in the notebook, and then we just spent the next hour just filming that stuff right out of the notebook and right onto the screen. And I think that that's part of why it all has such a freshness and a light, fun attitude, because we were just running around doing this stuff and kind of making it up as we go. And that's the thing. I mean, a lot of it is actually written, but it's like not written in the traditional sense where you'd like sit down by yourself in a room and write a screenplay and give it to actors and like rehearse it. It's written like 10 minutes before we, you know, go to shoot. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with that. I'm really proud of how that turned out just because of how quickly it all kind of came together and stuff. And yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, so it's really enjoyable, all those scenes to see. And yeah, it feels like more of like basically like a sketch comedy bit. Like you just have like lots of short sketches, although I'm not sure I would exactly call them sketches, but kind of in that way, right?
I know exactly what you mean. Sure, for sure. It's definitely like moments stitched together that are hopefully add up to something. But even if they don't, if they're funny, then let's use it. It still works.
Yeah, and you talked about Bill Whedon, and so I didn't know him, but like he has like a big career in the like lower tier movies, right? So, but he seemed like maybe he was having the most fun on set. And usually when you think of like these older actors, I mean, I just pulled up his IMDb and I see he's born in 1940. So usually when you see these older actors, you think they have like they're harder to work with, but it feels like with this movie he was like he was probably having more fun than all of you together. It felt like
definitely. Bill was inspiring to be around. So famously, Bill plays the villain in Sergeant Kabuki Man, which is one of the bigger Trauma titles. And Bill met Addison at a film festival, I think, like a few months before we were getting ready to shoot, and they really hit it off. And so so they decided to Bill wanted to be in this, and so we were really excited to have him. And I basically, yeah, both Bill and Kansas both were an absolute dream to work with. Bill was super inspiring. I can only hope that if I make it to 80 years old, I have as much energy as he does. He was so fun to be around. The production was so much fun because me, Addison, and Steve drove a van out to New York, and then we like slept on my friends' couches and stuff, and we shot out there with Kansas and Bill because they were both living out in New York at the time, and then we drove all 5 of us together, road tripped it back to Detroit, which is about a 10-12 hour drive. So we had a really fun day of the 5 of us just like driving and singing songs and having a really fun time. Headed back to Michigan, and that was so much fun. And like I said, Bill was inspiring because he just, at 80 years old, again, he just is so excited to be involved in movies like this, and is just so happy and just so dedicated to the work, and really fun to be with. That song that he sings, that little rap he does, he wrote that himself.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
Loved it.
Yeah, exactly. And he wrote that himself, and he was game to do anything, and was just again, both of them just added so much. They really made the movie work and saved the movie because they're really the ape, and I should say Steve did an amazing job as the ape. He wasn't an actor before or anything, and did a brilliant job as the ape. And I think what's great about it, the whole dynamic with that, is that you have these 2 professional actors in Kansas and Bill that have all the dialogue, so they can kind of do that stuff. And then Steve kind of became this great like silent movie actor, kind of because he just doesn't have any dialogue, but he had to move around a lot and stuff. And just the way he moved, I think, added to the humor and just made it really fun and funny for everyone. So yeah, we totally owe, like Addison and I, in directing it, just owe so much to them, because their spirit and their sense of humor and their joy of making stuff, totally made it all work. They're great. They're so fun to be around. Yeah. And Bill has amazing, like he said, he's been working forever and has all these great stories and has been, doing stuff since like the 70s. And yeah, he's great.
Yeah, it was really. You could really see that you are all having fun for sure, all throughout the movie, and I think that's always really important especially with these low budget movies. If it feels like it was just like. Often you can feel how the people felt making the movie, and if they were all having fun like with your movie, I think you can see that in every shot and every frame, that there's some fun and love in it. And also what I realized when I was watching it the second time, I think at least at the beginning there were lots of shots with the Psycho Ape poster in the background.
Yeah. Well, like I said, Jason Ewert, who we connected with on Facebook, and he did all this great artwork for us and made some teasers and did all the art and everything. And he was great, really part of the team. Unfortunately, like I said, he just lived in a different state, so he didn't get to be like on set with us. But we talk to him all the time. He's become a good friend of mine. He's a really talented guy. Filmmaker in his own right and graphic artist and stuff. And he made that stuff, really early on, and we already had stuff printed out. So you got to sell posters, got to put them in the background, I guess, right? Psycho Ape he's self promotion for sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it was just a thing where obviously it's just a lot funnier to have that stuff in there and have people catch it. I think it happens like 3 or 4 or 5 times in the movie. I don't even off the top of my head, but yeah, I love it. Sure. Anything to add, make the weirdness meter go higher.
Yeah, exactly. It just from the first scene, I think like even in the opening scene where they're just having like this party in basically like 20 years ago, which Meike and I realized while watching the movie 25 years ago was in the 90s. Although you shot it a bit like it wasn't it felt more of like 70s maybe from
it was supposed to it was, and the music I used was we were going for like Earth Angel, like back like 1950s, because it was supposed to be kind of this like 1950s girls like slumber party thing. And so I had used Earth Angel, from Back to the Future, the famous song, as the temp track. And then I found like a kind of a doo-woppy 50s-y kind of track to use as the music under that. So it's a very bizarre thing. It's, the opening sort of takes place like you said, it could be the 70s. It definitely takes place sometime in like the 70s or 50s. It's somewhere in that period. And then it jumps ahead 25 years to present day, and then it jumps ahead again 25 years later on. Right. So it really spans a 50-year period. And, of course, Nancy no one ever ages. Nobody ever changes at all. It really doesn't make any remotely any sense at all. But, very broad in scope and timeline film.
Yeah, it really, yeah, I totally forgot the last. So this movie spends half a decade of ape carnage, basically. It's really awesome. Meike, do you have any more questions? Because I'm talking all the time, so you can also take a few.
Yeah, I mean, you just said carnage, and when I hear that, sometimes you just scribed out the scenes when you are spontaneous thinking about them. How did you do that with the special effects? So like, okay, we want to do stuff here. I got just the idea for it, but how do we get the blood, or how do we get the bananas to look like knives so we can cut somebody's throat? So was that ever a problem?
Great question, honestly. I would say all the effects are so lo-fi and just like crappy, for lack of a better word. But of course that plays into the comedy of it. But no, it was. I mean, one of my favorite ones is when the ape smashes the girl's head with his foot. He like stomps on it. And my favorite thing is you still hear her screaming like after her head's already been completely crushed. But no, that was, I mean, I think an idea like that, it's like, well, going into the scene, we knew that we were going to, buy a melon and like put a wig on it and kind of do this fake thing. But even in the setup of that, I mean, it only took, 10 minutes to kind of get that set up and stuff. And then the rest of the scene is just sort of staged, with, the girl on the street and how we're doing that, how we're going to put all that together. No, it really, I mean, another one of my favorite ones too is like, actually a prop that we had built for Hectic Knife to get some blood spray was we took like PVC pipe and a hose, it's like a tube, and you would fill the piping with fake blood and water and stuff, and then you blow into it really hard and it would shoot this burst of blood out. So we knew we had that. So there's this one part where the ape chops the person's hand off, and you just sort of see like she doesn't even react at all, and then you see the hand come off, and you just see like the end of the piping and like a little bit of blood. It's like the dumbest thing. She doesn't even react like when her hand and that kind of stuff. It's like, well, we knew we just make this look really stupid. We had a fake hand. We just run the PVC pipe thing like through the shirt and stuff. And it was really, it was just sort of like takes like 10 or 20 minutes of kind of like setting up and stuff. I mean, I think even in the bloopers at the end, you can see like when the couple gets the banana stabbed through their heads, and like Addison's trying really hard to get the banana to like go upright, and it keeps like falling and stuff. And it's just, I think even in the movie, we let it fall down and did the cartoon kind of sound effect of the banana fall. And it was just, stuff like that. It was like, we would just, I give a lot of that credit to Addison and Steve, who really crafted a lot of that stuff and did a really good job. And they really made it all look really funny. And other people too. I mean, like, this guy, Bob, was the guy that played the guy in the Banana Man costume with a sign. And he brought his own googly eyes, and I think we had the meat and stuff. And so it was just like, he brought the fake tongue and all that. So it was just like, it was just really, a lot of that stuff was just crafting on their part. But they did a really good job. And I think also that's where some of the kind of quote unquote writing comes into it, because it's like, none of that was really maybe written on a piece of paper, but it was, written and conceived of in Addison and Steve's head. And they just, it's like when you have $7,000 as the budget, you sort of know that the effects aren't going to look like real. So, but they're supposed to be funny. So just make them look silly, and it'll totally work. They did a great job. And I love how silly the gore stuff all looks. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Since we now got talking about the gore, let's get into that, because like I said, our listeners of course know this, but we're talking about in this season of the podcast, we're talking all about gore. Like, we're going through the history of gore. We already talked about like how it started with basically with gladiator fights in the olden times, and then public beheadings. Gore was always a part. And so the episode that we're preparing this interview for is about gore as comedy. And so it might be a question that is not asked, because I wouldn't ask myself that question ever. But why do you think... or why did you think, let's make funny gore? Like, why did you guys... Why is gore funny for you? That's like a very hard question, I think.
Yeah, it's a good question too. I mean, when we did Hectic Knife, and gosh, honestly, we started making that over 10 years ago, back in Brooklyn when I was like in my early 20s. And, that idea happened really organically. I think Pete just grabbed these two big steak knives and went up on our roof at the time in Brooklyn and started doing all these weird moves with them, and I filmed him. And because he had these knives, it just sort of happened that there was obviously going to have to be blood and guts, because he's got these, you can't show a knife and then not, be stabbing some people, right? So like, but then of course, because Hectic Knife was such a silly comedy in the same way that Psycho Ape obviously is, and because there was such a low budget, it just felt like an easy way to get a laugh. I mean, I don't want to say easy, but a way to get a laugh was to, if you're gonna, I'm just making this example up, I don't know that specifically, but if you're going to cut someone's arm off or something, make it look stupid, because not even just that we can't afford to make it look good, but it's sort of like you've seen in a million high budget good movies gory effects that look great. And so if you can make something where, and you've also seen a million laughably bad movies. Like last night, I just watched Samurai Cop for the first time ever. I'd never seen it. And it's the perfect example of, similar to Tommy Wiseau's The Room or Plan 9 from Outer Space, attempting to do something well and it looking horrible. And that's obviously funny because, someone had a goal to do something a certain way and it didn't work out, and you're watching, you know, failure happen in real time and it doesn't look right. There's an absurdity to it. So it's sort of like the idea with Hectic and Psycho Ape is that, like I said, you've seen these examples of great gore effects, and you've seen these examples of people who are trying to make great gore effects and failing, and they look horrible. If we can show the audience that there's a cleverness and a design around gore that is purposefully bad, but that you have to kind of be in on that joke, because like I kind of said before, there's going to be, if you show these movies to 1 million people, there's going to be a lot of people that don't like them because they won't watch anything that's not a big giant budget. They won't like accept that. So if you show them something that walks that line where it's like, yeah, this is bad in the same way that Samurai Cop is, but we know it's bad and we're trying to do that on purpose, then I think you can get a laugh out of it. And that was always that's sort of just part of where that stuff came from in Hectic. And then I think Addison comes from the world of exploitation movies and trauma and all these places, and wanted to do something very similar to that. And then I think when we unlocked the idea that the ape would be almost like a cartoon character or like a video game character where he just like always has a banana and it's like unlimited and he can like sort of stick a banana in someone and then just like still kind of just have one for no reason, and that the bananas act like a knife where you can slash at someone and there be blood, and it doesn't make any like sense.
Especially because he peels the banana before he uses it sometimes too, where it's the least.
That is right, yeah. It's like unsheathing the sword or whatever. But no, it doesn't, so it doesn't make sense. But I'm personally interested in stuff like, for example, in the very beginning, in the slumber party scene, there's this moment where the ape is like chopping off the girl's foot, and the shot purposely goes on too long, and the music dips down, and the sound goes to like the sound of on the actual set where you can hear us like laughing in the background and how dumb it is.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in stuff like that because to me, that's these little tiny moments of like the curtain coming down and the insanity and absurdity of it all, but the purposefulness and the craft and the intention of it, where the joke actually is, oh, look, the filmmakers are like aware of how stupid this is. If we let it run, the audience will be like on board for how dumb this is, and you can tell it's like a fake foot and it just looks so dumb. And then we cut to the girl and she yells, "Ow, my foot," which is like, well, if you're getting your foot cut off, you wouldn't just say that. I mean, you'd be like horrifically screaming. Then the ape puts the banana in her mouth, and that for some reason kills her, even though that wouldn't kill someone. Doesn't make any sense. And then he turns, and this all happens in like a very short, 10-second period. He does the banana mouth, and then the camera pans, and he slashes, and the girl just turns into a skeleton. And I just love that stuff because to me, it's like, it's absurdity jokes. It's a visual joke. It makes no sense, but you're on board for it. And it's all these sort of different little styles of joke that happen really fast. And they're all built on this idea of like absurd violence. And then of course in that scene, there's just blood flying everywhere and stuff. And to me, I also think that a lot of movies that have a lot of blood and blood effects and guns and gunfights and knife fights and stuff, they're very like serious, and they sort of have to be because those are kind of serious things. But you watch some big Hollywood action movie and there's just blood flying everywhere and all these fighting, and I don't know. To me, like that stuff is just kind of like silly. Like it's not like it doesn't always like resonate in some deep way. And also, I'm such a big giant fan of like a movie like Indiana Jones, where you see the sword guy swinging the sword and then he just shoots the guy, and really, if you really think about the context of that, it's like a really insanely violent thing to do, but it's so funny, and I'm obsessed with stuff like that. So I think that I think that in a deeper way, and I don't want to get too philosophical or like pretentious again, but like, I mean, I feel like, why can gore be funny in general? I mean, I think part of it has to do with like everyone sort of has this innate fear of death or fear of these horrific accidents that can leave someone injured or losing a limb or whatever it is. We're a species that's been running away from tigers and sharks our whole existence, right? So it's sort of like to kind of turn that all on its ear and be able to laugh at it has some kind of primal therapy inside there, I think,
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more cartoony it is, the sillier it is, the more you're sort of disarmed at the idea of that stuff, if that kind of makes any sense. So I don't know. I think that all kind of comes into play, but I think it's fun. I love that stuff. I mean, and also as I keep making movies and stuff, would I want to make stuff that's maybe more like set in reality and more like cerebral and stuff like that? Sure, yeah. But I definitely have a lot of fun just letting the fake blood, fly and just throwing fake limbs around. It's definitely the greatest thing. So, yeah.
By the way, since you just also talked about that you love the kind of more silly gore in general, so one of my favorite movies, and if I remember correctly, you're not like a big horror guy, right? You're not really. Have you seen or have you heard of or have you seen Brain Dead by Peter Jackson?
Yes. In fact, so yeah, and let me clarify that for 1 second. I don't, I try to not like dislike a whole genre, and there's definitely horror movies that I absolutely love. In fact, I just moved out here to LA, and I just literally the other day was walking around all the places where they shot Halloween, and I saw like the hedge and the house and stuff, and it was really cool. And so no, there's definitely horror movies that I love, and I yes, but you mentioned that Peter Jackson movie. It's funny because Hectic Knife was a really long process to make. It took us like 5 years, and we were self-financing it and had no money and had just all the production hell of two guys making a movie for their own 20 grand. And halfway through that production process, I saw that movie for the first time. And I was reading about it and reading that that movie took Peter Jackson 5 years to make and had to he self-financed it. And
I think you're talking about Bad Taste, which is his first movie.
I apologize. You're right. Yeah. So no, I've never seen.
That's also very close. Yeah.
So you're right.
Can talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so I've never seen Brain Damage, but I have seen Bad Taste, and I just had this experience with Bad Taste where I was reading that, it took him, 5 years to make, and he's self-financing it, and he would shoot it one day a week or on weekends with his friends and stuff, and kind of made it up as he went. And it just gave me hope as this also young filmmaker that was doing the exact same thing, that maybe there's something to this. Maybe I can actually succeed in this somehow. But no, I haven't seen Brain Damage, so I can't. But but yes, that's the same exact kind of process.
Yeah, especially that movie actually fit better than the one I was thinking of. Yeah, Bad Taste is exactly like. It's kind of crazy that you had not seen that when you were shooting Hectic Knife, because maybe it's just the exact same feeling because it's a very different surrounding that it was made in. Like you were both doing it like with your own money, just like over a long period of time, just as a project you were wanting to do, and that's always a feeling you get. And Brain Dead is a movie he made a bit later. He made it's also called What's Dead Alive is the other title of it. It's got 2 titles, and that's one where he just goes over the top with the gore. Like it's much more gory and but also in a way that's just comedic and fun. So maybe if you haven't seen that yet, it's a recommendation for you. It's Brain Dead because it's a bit serious, but not really. It's just mostly really good special effects, but mostly just like over the top comedy. And So yeah, because you said that, and I wanted to ask because it's my favorite movie of all time, so it's kind of had to happen there.
Is there a part in that one where this guy has like two knives and he's just doing this really fast? And
bad guy. Yeah,
there's actually a shot in Psycho Ape that is trying to be a parody of that, where the ape has two bananas and is doing this, and there's blood flying around. Which I had never seen that one, but I remember because Addison, occasionally we would go to shoot, and he would want to do these little homages to these little tiny moments and things. And so he pulled that one up as a thing. So even though I've never seen the film, I do know that little part.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a movie I would recommend for you if you like the over-the-top gore and comedy part. But yeah, and of course, I'm really glad that you're not trying to hate a whole genre, especially since we are a horror podcast. But
of course,
yeah, I just remembered that when we first talked, because to me, Hectic Knife as well as Psycho Ape were very much in the horror genre, even though they were horror comedies. But I think you also said about Hectic Knife that you don't really see it as a horror movie. How's it about Psycho Ape?
That's a good question. I mean, look, Hectic Knife obviously the opening scene is plotted out in the way that you would a horror scene. It's meant to look suspenseful and with the girl alone in the alley looking around and hearing noises and stuff. So I completely understand that. And I also understand that, I mean, you got a movie with the word knife in the title, and there's tons of blood flying around, and it just has it has some of the ornaments of a horror film, and I can't deny that. And I would this is maybe a weird thing to say, but there's no comedy community the way that there is a horror community. If there was a comedy community, I would have very much tried to have them embrace and understand Hectic Knife, but that just doesn't really exist. But there's like horror conventions and stuff, and so I am very grateful and delighted that the horror community is accepting of Hectic Knife as part of it, because for me as the filmmaker, am interested in the comedy. So it's almost like, to me, if I'm using horror elements in those movies, it's to do a joke. It's not to scare anyone. And when I think of a horror movie, I think of a movie that's trying to scare someone, whether it be a slasher, so that be, Friday the 13th Part 7 and it's a bunch of gore and craziness, and it's trying to scare you that way, or whether it's, psychological, like, Psycho or Ari Aster or whatever. I think of the goal as being to be scary, whereas with Hectic Knife and Psycho Ape, we're really never trying to scare you. We're only ever trying to make people laugh. So to me, that just puts it completely in the comedy world. But at the same time, clearly, Psycho Ape is absolutely like a slasher film, which is a horror, subgenre of horror. And I can't deny that. It's just very obvious. And I think that there's definitely overlap. I think part of the overlap is because, when you watch movies like Friday the 13th and you get into, like, everyone loves and everyone knows like, I love The Shining and everyone knows The Shining, and everyone loves, Halloween and some of the touchstone, big horror movies and stuff. And certainly there are those ones that are purely, trying to be sort of serious, you take a movie like Silence of the Lambs, and it's obviously supposed to there's not like laughs in it, like it's not supposed to be funny, and it's working on a level of horror and suspense. But when you watch like slashers and stuff, there's just this bizarre element of silliness that runs through them, and I think it has to do with the kind of what you said before about, like, you get a flavor of what it was like on set. It's like you get a bunch of these like young college kids that are just like goofing around, and they're making a movie is a lot like going to summer camp, like, and then sometimes literally, because you're doing Friday the 13th 3 or whatever, and you're like at a camp, and it's just sort of, I think you get that flavor of that, and I think that there's a lot of overlap with that level of horror and with comedy. And I've always been, I guess, kind of interested in that. So I think that as much as for me personally, I sort of see these movies as comedies, or at least mechanically speaking, as the person or one of the people, building this engine. I'm trying to when you turn the key, you're supposed to generate laughter. Like when the engine comes on and the car goes, like I want people to be laughing. And if they're afraid, I feel like I didn't do my job right, because what there's nothing scary about this. So I don't, But no, I really appreciate the inclusion into that genre, and I think that Psycho Ape definitely dips its toe in much further than Hectic does into horror, because I think it's just the very nature of it is much more like one of those 80s slashers that's like really bizarre and just a kind of a. I mean, really, it has the Michael Myers and Jason thing, because the killer doesn't, speak, and he's kind of behind this mask, or, it's supposed to be an ape or whatever, but, it's like this, it's just a figure of a monster, not a human. And, so I think it all like fits into that for sure. And that was definitely the intention. I mean, Addison has a much more passion and encyclopedic knowledge for those genres than I do. I'm not really a trauma fan or like a fan of, say, like exploitation films, but Addison really is. So he's the one that kind of brought that flavor to it, and I'm glad. I mean, I think the film succeeds, for that stuff too, and really works. So yeah, I'm not. I mean, I think part of me in the promotion of Hectic was, a little bit like, I don't know, for lack of a better way to put it, like wishing that people would call it a comedy or something, just because it's like, I don't know, it's supposed to be funny. Like everyone keeps telling me it's this like horror movie, and it's like, I don't know, it's not scary. Like I hope it's funny though. And, but no, I've grown to appreciate all of it. I mean, and I was probably a little bit more like, oh, I don't really like horror movies. And I mean, look, I'm not the kind of person that has like a whole wall of horror DVDs like Addison does, and like some people do. I'm sure you guys probably do. Yeah. And I love that stuff, but I don't, I'm just like, to me, I'm like a comedy guy. I make comedies and documentaries basically. And those are the things I understand and the things that I like. And I haven't seen, every horror movie in the 80s and stuff myself, but no, I'm not against it. And I love all that stuff. And I don't really try to hate on any genre in any way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also, I can see that the horror community is basically the only, I was talking about that as well with lots of friends. The horror community is really the only subgenre community that you have. There are some people who are especially action fans maybe, but those are mostly, then they're not talking about action with all their friends. They're just mostly watching action movies. And maybe there are fans of comedies, but those are usually just watching comedies and not talking about them. Horror fans are the ones that really, and horror fans are very inclusive. Like we take I totally agree with you. This movie is not scary, and it made us laugh a lot. So it's but we're glad to take it as one of our own and saying, yeah, this is a horror movie because it's good, and that's
good. I appreciate you. We appreciate you very much. I appreciate that a lot. And I mean, look, there's I would say science fiction and fantasy, adventure, even action. I mean, obviously, Comic-Con is like the biggest thing in the world, and that's a whole crowd based on that stuff. At the same time, Comic-Con isn't just movies, it's comics and other TV and other media and graphic art and all that stuff. Look, I mean, again, if there were comedy conventions and like festivals, I'd be super excited to go to all those, and I'd see all the stand-ups, and I'd, buy all their comedy albums and stuff. I couldn't tell you why that doesn't exist, because I think that's really cool, and I'd love to have a community. But yeah, at the very most with that stuff, you'd have to go on like Facebook groups or something and try to find that stuff. But no, it really doesn't. And I with Hectic and stuff, and obviously with COVID, everything's different. But with Hectic, and Addison and stuff, we would go to a lot of those horror conventions. And, obviously, hopefully the world can come back to a place where, we can start going there with Psycho Ape. Because, Psycho Ape has actually won like 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 like little small film festivals. But everything's been online. which is just kind of unfortunate because we got the opportunity to screen it with an audience one time in Detroit. We had about 40 people with masks, like in a big open room. And it was super fun. I mean, it was just great. It was just really, it got wall to wall laughter, and it was really fun, and everybody had a good time. And I just wish we could do that. Those horror conventions are, they're really fun. You get a big eclectic mix of people, and you'll get, endless booths with all kinds of crazy horror stuff, and everyone's got their, trading their tapes and selling stuff. And it's just, it's a lot of fun. I wish that existed for other stuff, but it doesn't.
Yeah, sadly it doesn't. I'm glad that I'm a fan of the horror genre, and we have these conventions. Mike and I even went to a few already over here, because even like I'm living in a very small part of Germany where there's no big conventions, but even we have our own horror convention that is just for our county, basically, for our part of the country. And so the horror has it all. And also I just realized you must be really happy, since you said you're mostly about comedy, and I just saw that on IMDb that you even got some awards at the Independent Horror Movie Awards, and you even got an award for best humor, so that must be
Yes. Hey, that's perfect. I mean, that's exactly what we wanted. Yeah, definitely. No, that was really exciting. And it's this kind of thing, though. It's like, what a bummer that you can't go to the festival and screen it and meet the other filmmakers and have all that fun. But hopefully someday with, my hope is that if things ever get back to normal, that, we could, like, the festivals like that, if they happen in person, would like retroactively let us come. And if they can't program the movie, at least like let us kind of hang out and just whatever. Just because we're missing out on all that stuff, and it'd be super fun to do that.
Especially with this movie. So I'm not sure exactly. So this movie completely came out while COVID was already rampaging wide. So because I think with this movie, I hope you get at least to do some screenings, because I feel like this is one of those movies that would be really fun with just like, it doesn't even have to be a packed theater, but just like with a theater of people just like watching this movie together. I think this would be really enjoyable.
Thanks.
To see. So I hope that you'll get to do a few screenings at least, if not many more. So You already mentioned Trauma before. So Hectic Knife was picked up by Trauma and released by Trauma. So do you have any release for Psycho Ape, or is it all just like you doing it yourself?
Doing it ourselves, because we I don't want to say too much about this, I guess, but we can do better on our own, basically. And for a little tiny movie that was shot for, $10,000 or whatever, we've already, at this point, fulfilled all of the Kickstarter rewards. I think there might be like a few that still have to get shipped out, but, we're pretty much set with that. And as far as I know, we've already sold like 200 DVDs just on our own, which is truly, I think, amazing for a tiny little 10,000 movie. Yeah. And that's all Addison. He's doing a great job with that. He sells them on eBay, or you could probably just contact him and he'll sell you one. I mean, I just, that's more than we sold with Hectic. And I just think that having the freedom and autonomy to do with it what we want to do is just better. And if there's ever any demand, which there somewhat is already a little bit, we would gladly do like a commentary for Psycho Ape. And because the DVD that you buy is really just like the disc, and you just kind of, it has artwork and stuff. But, we would do that kind of stuff. And there even has been little rumblings of doing a Psycho Ape sequel, because especially now that I'm out in Hollywood, it would be kind of like the way the first one is structured. We have the slumber party scene, and then the middle is really weird, and then it ends in New York for like the King Kong stuff. And so our idea for the second one would obviously be that it ends out here in Hollywood, and you sort of do like the Blazing Saddles or the Pee-wee's Big Adventure kind of ending where you're like romping around LA and all that stuff. And don't know if that'll happen, so I don't want to like get hopes up or anything. But you know, we have been like talking about it. You know, obviously, if we could raise another, you know, $10,000 to do that, we would definitely do it. I think, you know, I mean, I just moved out here, and Addison and Steve are still back in Detroit and stuff. But yeah, I think we can just do better with it on our own. So there's really not any need to involve trauma. I mean, I guess I like I said, I don't know if I want to speak on it too much, but I would say it's sort of like lesson learned. You know, I don't obviously begrudge anyone for being a fan of trauma, and that's all fine. But as far as like releasing a movie through them, I think you're probably better to just do it on your own. You know,
okay.
Keep ownership of your own thing and have the freedom to kind of do what you want to do with it, I guess.
Yeah, okay. That makes, especially like in these days where like there's so many streaming services and there is this connection online. I think it's also very easy to just like go online and sell it. Like you said, if he's selling it on eBay, like you gotta give me an email where I can send an email to him. I hope he's also shipping to Germany, because that's one of those movies that I think would fit perfectly into my collection, and it's one of those that I can show to people and say like, yeah, this movie you probably have never heard of, and then I'm gonna sell it big, and then we're gonna have a big following over here in Germany for your movie.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, Meike, do you have any other questions? Because I know you prepared a few questions as well. And
yeah,
you didn't really get to talk much.
That's all right. I love to listen. I was thinking about, how do you handle actors when you have to ask them, can I put all this blood on you? or can I cut your feet off? I have this funny idea with the banana. So how do I get them on board?
To add into this, because Meike had some of the easier examples, but also how do you get two girls to sit naked in a bathtub, one with a duck as her head, and because I think that's like something else like, entirely.
Yeah. So you know, a couple of things. So first of all, anyone that's like volunteering or agreeing to be in a movie like Psycho Ape, I think they pretty much know what they're in for as far as some of that stuff. I think they're sort of volunteering because they want to be covered in blood or splattered or whatever. I think that then once they, again, either volunteer, if they volunteer themselves, you kind of know, okay, they're down to be sprayed up with blood or whatever it is. If you ask them, you know, I think the next step after they're going to be in it is that you sort of re-emphasize to them, like, hey, by the way, just so you know, like, make sure you bring clothes that you don't care about wrecking, and, you know, we'll obviously be very, very conscientious of you, but like, you're going to get splattered a little bit and stuff. And of course, they're always down for it, but yeah, you just be nice to, you know, you make sure that they understand that beforehand. And of course, everything that you do effects-wise, you know, you're never just like throwing somebody into it without telling them that they're going to get sprayed or something. So you show them what's going to happen, and you do a dry run and a trial run and all that stuff beforehand. And we had some interesting stories with that stuff. Like, for example, the guy that gets there's a little montage of the ape just like killing random people, and the guy that gets his heart pulled out actually drove across a few states to be in the movie for us, and wanted to do that because he himself in his life has actually had 2 heart transplants. So he wanted to like honor that kind of by having his heart ripped out, which was just really interesting. And we actually got really lucky. You know, Addison has this sort of cool little following of people on like Facebook and just through the other stuff he does. And, you know, I have people that know about Hectic Knife and stuff. So we had people that like volunteered to want to be in the movie, but they were coming from all over. They were, you know, people came from, you know, we're in Detroit, and you know, America's a big kind of spread out thing. So it's like they came from like Indiana and New York and Ohio and Kentucky and Las Vegas, and some of those trips are a few hours by plane or a really long car ride and stuff. And they came and they paid their own way, God bless them, and they were really generous, and they kind of volunteered their time and were excited to be in the movie and stuff. And it's just like, I think you be as fun when someone's doing that for you. I think you make an effort to be as like fun and accommodating to them as possible, and let them know what they're going to be doing. And, even though they're already excited to do it, you kind of let them know, like, okay, just so you know, like, you better wear a shirt you don't care about ruining, and that kind of stuff. And then, hey, just provide a bathroom for them to clean up as best they can, for the ride home. Right. As far as the nudity, I mean, I had never had nudity in a film that I had done before. And, to me, in a weird way, that scene really like sticks out, because I feel like the rest of the movie is very tame. Like, despite all the cartoony violence and all the kind of craziness, it's very like lighthearted and like tame in a certain way. And that all of a sudden there's like nudity. It's like, whoa, this is like, it's kind of like shocking. And but no, I mean, I think those were I've become friends with one of the girls that's in it, very well, and she's really nice and stuff, and we talk and everything, and they were both great, and I like really appreciate that they did the scene and stuff. And I think for Addison, I think because he was doing an exploitation movie, he felt like it needed to have nudity, basically. And I mean, if you remember, there's actually no nudity in Hectic Knife, and that was it was on purpose, because I didn't think it like needed it. It like wasn't trying to be an exploitation film, and there was just no reason to have that. So it just didn't need to be a part of it. But with Psycho Ape, I think Addison felt like we were trying to be more like on genre, so he wanted to include that. And I think it's a funny scene. We obviously did the Nightmare on Elm Street, parody shot and stuff, and that was fun. But no, yeah, like I said, it was the first nude scene I filmed, and honestly, I mean, when you're on a set, you're just like working, and so I think it's pretty easy to stay, professional and just like get the job done, kind of thing. And so, yeah, that's kind of what we did. And it was fine, but yeah, they were really nice to do that. And, yeah, it worked out, it worked out okay. But yeah, it was fun. It was all good.
Okay. If everyone was having fun, then it's all good, I think. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Since we're talking a bit about the actors, you also had like these, the filler sisters, if I'm right. They seem like, there seems to be something special about them, because they're in it. Like, I think they both died twice, which only happens to Dr. Zoomis.
Yeah, Dr. Zoomis just keeps dying over and over. Well, I should say, so Dylan Mars Greenberg, who's one of the filler sisters, it's Dylan and her friend Amanda Flowers. Amanda is a great actress. She's in some trauma movies. She's just great. She's like lovely to hang out with, really talented, really awesome. And then Dylan is a truly accomplished filmmaker and musician, really honestly a genius. I mean, she started directing features when she was about 17 or 18, and I think she's directed I want to say 6 features by now, and her latest one coming up is absolutely brilliant. I've been fortunate enough to see a rough cut of it. I don't think it's finished yet, but she does music videos, and they're absolutely brilliant, like amazing. And she has her own band. It's a duo, and they're called Theophobia. And they're great. In fact, it's their songs that are underneath their scenes when they're walking around. And they were just a lot of fun. I think what was fun for me about that stuff was we really that was probably the most improvised moments. And we really just said, okay, we were in a park in New York. Just, the thing, I'm going to walk backwards, make sure I don't hit anything, someone be my eyes. And you guys just start talking. And I think we probably shot 20 minutes of them doing that, and then I just cut it down. And they had a real. What I love about their stuff is that I think naturally, especially Dylan, really played into this. But I think both of them. I mean, they're good friends in real life, and that really you can see that. But I think they really played up the John Waters like acting style, where it's just very. There's just something off about it. I mean, but in their case, it's very on purpose, and they're just sort of playing it up and just being really over the top and bizarre. And I loved that stuff. I thought that was really fun, and it's really fun to do. And they're just really talented. But yeah, Dylan and Kansas both are directors in their own right that are both coming out with new movies like really soon, and they're both brilliant. So Kansas is called Cuddly Toys. Dylan's is called Spirit Riser, and they're both excellent films that I truly believe will be on Criterion sometime in maybe the distant future, but sometime in the future, because they're going to have really long, brilliant careers. They're both geniuses. So
okay, I'm gonna follow them, and I'm gonna see what they're gonna make. It's always a bit harder because we're over here in Germany. Like I'm not full. I don't think we have Psycho Ape over here. I think you said that in the US it's gonna be on Amazon.
It is on. It's on Amazon. Are you able to watch it on Amazon then over there?
No,
or no?
we have our own. Amazon, basically we have German Amazon, and they don't. I'm gonna look it up right now while we speak, but I don't think they have it in there yet. Maybe if you can find out a way to get your movie into other countries, I think you would find some people who would want to watch it over here.
Yeah, sure. I know. I appreciate that. Yeah, just out of curiosity, is Hectic Knife on Amazon for you too? Because that's also on Amazon.
Let me see.
And someone better call Bezos up and get this stuff figured out. He's got enough money. He should be able to get this over to Germany.
On Amazon over here, we have the Hectic Knife soundtrack on Amazon Music.
That's weird.
So
I know that. I also know Hectic Knife is on a couple Roku channels. One is called like Fossum, and there's another one. I think it's on a couple of those like streaming things on Roku, but I'm not even sure which ones. It's also obviously it's on Troma now. Hectic Knife is.
There's also over here in Germany we have like we have a bad thing with all those. We don't have these American channels at all. Some of them we had Tubi for a while, if you know that one, but that's gone as well.
Oh, that sucks. I just watched Samurai Cop on Tubi last night.
We had that for some time, but we don't have it anymore. So it's basically we have our own streaming services for everything. Like there's also a German Netflix that's not the same as the American one, and so. Maybe especially with Psycho Ape, look into it if you can. If you can also release it over here, because I would watch it on there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and look, I mean, the DVD exists, so I get, if you guys have your region-free players, because I'm sure our DVDs would be region 1, I guess, right? Yeah.
That's a possibility. We can play those. I'm gonna buy one for sure. So you gotta give me the information once we're done here, because that's a movie I want to have in my collection. That's like
I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. You do have Hectic Knife?
No,
Yeah. In fact, I can. We'll email back and forth, because I'll make sure you get both of them, and I'll sign them both and stuff, and I'll send you some stuff. Yeah, because I have like some of my DVDs and stuff. Do you have a VHS player? Like a VCR?
Mike has one. Yeah.
Okay, because I can send you the Hectic Knife VHS and stuff too.
Oh,
awesome.
We're gonna exchange emails after this is done, and. That is awesome, yeah. So since we were talking about the actors before, we kind of trailed off right now. But I also wanted to ask. So there are many people that you can see are like just in there for the fun, like the guys who are eating ice cream, the two sisters who are having the ratatouille fight. But there's also the news anchors, and so. I'm guessing I'm guessing those are at least the main anchor. I don't have his name out right now, but he at least sounds like a professional news anchor. So there must be some story about those.
Well, yeah. So I'm friends with Tanya, who plays Berlinda Gilronin, and she brought Grover. They're both local actors in Detroit, and I cast her, and she immediately suggested Grover. And Grover was amazingly perfect. He was so funny. They both were, and it was funny because I don't think that they knew exactly what they were getting into, especially Grover, because I think I could be wrong and stuff, but I think that I think that Grover is more used to being in stuff that just has a more professional vibe. That's not to say that we weren't professional people, like meaning like we, everything was like good, whatever, but it was just like a green screen in an apartment with some lights and like my camera, and like that's like basically it. Like there was nothing, no real crew or anything. And so I think that because of that, and again, this is just sort of my intuition, like speculation on this, but I think that partly because of that, I think that made Grover a little bit more like loose to just sort of do what he wanted. And I also know this part for a fact is that neither of them knew that I was going to be using all the like in between the takes, material, like where they're just going and correcting each other and stuff. So we just had a lot of fun with it, and we had stuff that we had like written for them to say, and then we did all that, and it just came out the way it came out. And then, when it's one of those things where when you're like, as we're shooting this, I'm already knowing in my mind, like, all right, we're definitely using like all this stuff because this is really funny. And to me, that's another one of those things that kind of like saved the movie because it's so bizarre and oddly funny and works so well in that universe and has that, again, I use that word of like devolving into chaos, like feeling where like you're in a movie and then all of a sudden like there's like, mistakes on purpose, like in the movie itself, and you have to be on board for all that. And I just sort of can sense how funny it was, and I just think that characters, it's like, to me, I wanted this movie to feel like, before when you mentioned that it's almost like a series of comedy sketches, it's sort of like I wanted it to be a thing where I knew we were going to be cutting back to all these different characters, and I didn't want the audience to kind of groan or like roll their eyes or feel let down whenever we cut to the next one. I wanted everyone to bring something like strong. And so I sort of knew that as that stuff was happening, that these news anchors were going to bring something really funny. So it felt strong. It's like you can go from news characters to, Dylan and Amanda walking in the park, the Filler sisters. You can go back to anything that you go to should be good, especially because there's no plot. So you're not invested in any like story. There's no emotional arc or anything changing, learning anything. So it's sort of like this all has to be strong, like when we go back to it. And I really, I just think like their level of not being kind of like aware that all the mistakes were going to be in the movie is what makes it perfect. And I think along with that, they've been such good, not only beyond good sports about that, but I think once, especially Tanya saw the movie and she just like loves it so much and she's so happy, and I'm so happy for her to like be in it and stuff. And I just think like she totally like gets it, she gets that's works and that's what's funny. And I'm so like proud because I have to admit, even I was a little bit like, just sort of like, okay, I hope that they understand that I'm not, that the movie's gonna be this way, and I'm not at all trying to make them look like there's mistakes, but that it is just really funny, and I hope that they like get it and are on board, and thankfully they do, and it really worked out well, and there couldn't be a bigger like cheerleader for the film than like her and Bill and some of the people that are in it, so I'm really proud of that. But it was definitely, and one of my favorite things too is just that like in the first 10 minutes of the movie, you do like the slumber party scene, and then you go to the news, and then the news just recycles like footage that we've already seen, like from the first scene. Yeah. So it's already like redundant and like redoing itself somehow. And I will say that our idea, if we ever do the second one, our idea is that we cold open with the news team again, and they are retelling, you know, stuff from the first movie, and they're covering this big like trial where the ape is on trial. And I basically just say that because I like really hope we get to that, because it just sounds really fun to do. But I love the news team. I mean, yeah, that stuff was really fun to do. And also I will say too that in a lot of these micro budget indie movies, they always do, for some reason, try to do like a news thing. And it always just looks so bad, but they're always earnestly trying to do it, and it just looks horrible. Like, you watch a movie, like, I think, like, Birdemic probably has, like, news beats in it, and they just look so bad, and you're like, why bother doing it if it's going to look that bad, or, like, do anything to make this look better or more realistic? And so that was part of my kind of nod to doing that. And there's even a thing in there where it says breaking news, and it like zooms in, but like the text like spills off the screen and it looks horrible. That was all on purpose, because I just want, it's like a nod to how bad all that stuff always looks and how much the directors never care to try to make it look good at all. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with that stuff.
That's really awesome. And by the way, I read the scroll at the bottom.
Good job.
So
yes.
I felt the text.
I'm very glad. Yeah, that's that was one of my proudest moments too, because in shots like that, I just felt like there were so many jokes on the screen all at one time. You had the news scroll, them talking was a joke, the footage they were showing was a joke, the fact that it was like supposed to be surveillance footage, but it was like obviously not. It didn't make any sense. Like all that, there was like, to me, it's like those shots have like 5 different jokes like all happening at one time, and I'm proud that we crammed all that into one frame, and I'm hoping that people were reading that stuff. I don't even remember what a lot of it says. I think it says something about like, why are you reading this? It's a joke. It's obviously a joke.
That's where it ends. Yeah, and before that, I think it's something that stocks are going down. I think there was something in there, but maybe banana stocks going up or something.
Stock or something is going down. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Good stuff. I'm glad that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about the rewatchability. Like, you can watch this a second or a third time. It's always better to watch this with someone, because, like I said, when I was watching it the first time alone in bed, it was just kind of like, I was loving it already, but I was writing to people, we have to talk about this, I have to tell you about this. So I hope this movie gets some more people to watch it. I'm also seeing, I mean, okay, it's IMDb, but it's gotten 8.9 out of 10 on IMDb right now. So you're pretty good.
We're holding strong. I think it's got like 65 votes or something, somewhere around there.
Yeah, 63 exactly. Yeah. Great.
So look, if we can get to 100 and hold that rating, I think we're doing all right. Yeah, look, I mean, I'm proud that we've sold the 200 copies, and with a little tiny movie like this, I'm definitely proud of that. I mean, 63 ratings is obviously not a lot, but I mean, hey, yeah, it's more than nothing, right?
That means you got 63 people to watch that movie. Just imagine them in one room, and
they all liked it too, right?
Yeah. Mike and I didn't even rate it yet online, but
there you go, 65. See, there we go. We'll be up to 65, and we'll hold strong at almost a 9. So, yeah, no, and yeah, like you said about the screenings, I just to say something on that. I will say that, with Hectic Knife and this movie both, with Hectic, I've had the great opportunity to have public screenings of it, maybe like a dozen times. In different cities all around America and stuff. I actually screened it once in Brussels, but I wasn't able to be there. But I will say I've been really proud of the fact that literally, whether it's 5 people in a bar or 40 people in a theater or 30 people in a bar, it really truly does. And I don't know if this sounds like arrogant or whatever, but it does like work. Like, it gets wall-to-wall laughter. I've seen it like kind of change people's mood and get, I've been in rooms where there's like 25 people packed into like a small space and everybody is laughing at the same parts and kind of going in that same direction and kind of into this weird movie. And I think with Psycho Ape, I've seen it screened twice because of COVID, but it was the same thing. And I really think that I'm just really proud because I feel like Hectic Knife was something that I poured my heart and soul into over a 5-year period. And it, even though it didn't, sell $1 million worth and reach a giant audience, it still, when it comes time to show it, it works. People respond to it and it works and it pleases the audience and stuff. And with Psycho Ape, I was really relying on the instincts that I had and everything that I sort of learned from doing Hectic, and we were able to do Psycho Ape in just like a year period, and I feel like it works again. And I'm just really, to me, I'm really proud of that because I think as an artist, especially like a filmmaker and stuff, or like I guess a musician or a stand-up or whatever, I think like when you make these things that are supposed to like join with an audience and like get them interested in watching and stuff, there's nothing more proud than to like hear you say like, oh yeah, I watched it and then I just really wanted to watch it again and show people and watch it with a group. I mean, I think that's like the best compliment that you can get. And when someone, again, like you say, like you watch it a second time and you discover more stuff. And even with something that's so absurdly silly like this, the fact that, you can appreciate that there is like an artistry and a craftsmanship like to that. And it's, not just randomness completely, but it's a designed chaos, right? There's nothing more that makes you feel more proud and satisfied and stuff like as an artist. And I'm so happy to have that. And I really do, even though these are these like tiny little absurd movies that, again, I totally understand they're not for everyone. And there's a lot of people that would basically just like reject them based on style and like alone. But when they step up to the plate or whatever, when you put them out there in front of people, like there is a certain level of, like undeniably, like this is working. Like no matter what you think, it's like you're gonna crack a smile at something and get on board with it. And I'm just really proud of that. And I'm very excited to be able to hopefully eventually start showing Psycho Ape like publicly somehow, because I just really want to feel that feeling again. And I really appreciate you saying that about it and feeling that. It just makes me feel like it's like, the 10 grand and the year and a half of life spent, working hard on it was like totally worth it. So I'm really proud to hear that. And I really appreciate it.
That's great. That's awesome. So since you said you're already thinking about doing Psycho Ape 2, but like a question that's, I think, the typical interview question is, what do you have planned next? Like, is there anything planned? What's going on next? Or is it planning Psycho Ape 2?
I don't want to get any hopes up. I hope that we do Psycho Ape 2. I'm rooting for that to happen. I think it's definitely a possibility. Keep in mind there's logistical stuff because I'm across the country and everything, but we're gonna try to make it happen. But yeah, no, thank you for asking. So I started making a music documentary when I was only 19. I'm now 34, and I'm still making it. But it does exist in rough cut form. The rough cut's between 2 and 2.5 hours right now. And I actually, since moving here to LA, I just had the dream come true pleasure of being able to interview Gerald Casali of Devo at his house out here in Santa Monica. So that was literally a lifelong dream come true because Devo is probably my favorite band of all time. And so that was amazing. And I'm super excited about that. And that will be hopefully finished up over this next year. I've been working with some people to get it finished and been working on it and stuff. So that's a project I'm really, really excited about. So you can find that on my IMDb too. It's a documentary called What Kind of Music Do You Listen To? And then I am finishing up a screenplay that's called Solitary, which is about a guy in solitary confinement for 20 plus years, and that's the whole movie. So it's basically, in fact, to be honest with you, I would say that is closer to horror than anything else I've done, but horror in the sense of it's, I've had a couple people read it, and it's, the reaction I'm getting from it is that it's like brutally realistic, almost documentary in its take on just the realism of it, and it is based on a lot of research and stuff. So it literally is just the story of like one guy in a room in solitary confinement for that time, and the different kind of just I don't want to even give anything away, but I'm working on that, and my hope is with that when the draft is finished in the next couple months here, that I will be able to start making that somehow. It will require a budget higher than $7,000. It'll have to be probably a couple $100,000, and we'll have to. I have no idea how we're gonna like find that money. But the way I describe it is like sort of going for Netflix quality, which what I mean when I say that is like not specifically that it like has to go on Netflix, but like, it's not going to be like a tiny little SD thing. It'll be like whatever the modern resolution is and kind of be made to look like a real thing. So I'm working on that. I have another couple screenplays that I'm working on. And then I do want to make another movie that is, I would call like in the style of Hectic Knife and Psycho Ape, because really when I was doing Psycho Ape, I really got energized about just I've always, ever since I was a teenager, I've always been the kind of filmmaker that never had any money or like big resources, and was always more of like the John Waters, like kid on the street with their camera, like just with like a tiny crew, just like doing stuff and making it up. So I definitely want to do something like that again, and I know that I want it to be called Bad Brain, and I have a bunch of ideas, but I don't have anything ready to like go film, but it's percolating, and I feel like my quasi plan, or I don't have it like set in stone, but it's kind of like working on my music documentary, which is mostly in the editing post stage, trying to get that finished up, and then writing these screenplays. And kind of, to me, like Solitary and the other screenplays, it's like when you're writing and it's a bigger thing like that, the work is like development. So it's like writing and having meetings and trying to get a bigger thing to happen, which is kind of a different animal. And then with Bad Brain, though, it's like I want to just go on the streets and like make this thing. And I feel like I have enough, friends and people to do that with, but I'm kind of just like not really ready to go out there and do it quite yet, just because I don't feel like I have enough material yet, and it would be a little bit bigger of an undertaking than something like Hectic and Psycho Ape, where you'd probably need a little bit of money, kind of. But so I'm just trying to figure out. But excuse me. That's where I'm at, though. Yes, I got a bunch of things going on.
Okay, so there's a lot going on. Just because I'm a big fan of music documentaries, so the title is "What kind of music do you listen to?" What is it about? Like the title is pretty explanatory, but what kind of what's it going to be about?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because even though I've been making this thing for 15 years, I've yet to. I don't have like the logline elevator pitch, like this is what it is kind of thing. So the best I can explain it is so. It is a documentary about quite literally the entire art form of music. But what does that really mean? Well, we're going to explore and attempt to start to have this conversation of explanation about why is music universal? Why do all human cultures throughout all of history make music? Why does it seem to be part of our biology and something that evolved within us and co-evolved as we evolved as a species? But then sort of the deeper, almost more important question to go along with that the movie really explores is why does a question like what kind of music do you listen to feel like such a deeper, loaded question than it is. Why is that question sort of asking more like, what kind of person are you? Because how does your artistic or specifically musical taste sort of define you as a person? And how do people, when they interact with the music that they love, is it a matter of sonics and biology? So they just heard a song and those specific patterns and arrangements of sound, they just love that and that's what they're locked into? Or is it more a question of this is the kind of person that I want to be? This is the identity that I want to have. Am I a country music, hillbilly person? Am I an urban rapper type person? Am I a super lefty, punk guy? Am I, what is the music that I love saying, and what do I want it to say, and what does it say about who I am? And so it's sort of a conversational, like philosophical exploration of what that is. And the process in the beginning for getting that material was between the ages of like 19 and about 21 or 2. I did about 100 interviews with all kinds of musicians. You can sort of look down the IMDb list, but I talked to Daniel Johnston, Bela Fleck, Victor Wooten, TJ Spooky. There's a band here that we call the Presidents of the United States of America. Just Ben Weasel from Screeching Weasel, a guy, the sax player from Dave Matthews Band, the bass player, co-founder of Maroon 5, Danny Warhol's. The list just goes on and on and on. And tried to be absolutely as eclectic as possible in terms of genre and type of person. And also interviewed like people on the street in Times Square and some other places. Interviewed some professors. So I really amassed, and I also got original performance footage from almost every musician that's in it. So amassed a couple hundred hours of material. And it took a lot of time to get that all into a rough cut form. But it's finally at that stage. And so I'm now kind of finally getting this kind of all polished out. And we're not really sure exactly how it'll be released, leaning toward actually just releasing it on YouTube. And not monetized because it has a lot of like music and clips from other movies and like it'll just have like tons of rights issues. But yeah, super excited to get it finished up, and I do desperately wish I had a better like concise like log line like kind of pitch for it, because I just feel like I'm always kind of rambling when I answer that question. But it's a very big scoped thing, and it's very conversational, and it's 2.5 hours of just interviews of all these super interesting, amazing, different musicians that are all kind of having this ongoing sort of evolving conversation with me, the interviewer, and then sort of almost with each other, but not literally because they're on interview. But it's this big conversation about the art form, and I'm very excited. Yeah, and like I said, Devo was a dream interview from the very beginning when I was 19, and I can't believe I actually was, in Jerry Casale's house. So it was a total dream come true. And yeah,
that really sounds awesome. And I gotta say, even though it is a big plot, it's very hard to describe, but it made total sense. But also, I think you picked the perfect title for that, because the title, "What Kind of Music Do You Listen to?" really, everything you just said is in that title. So that's really cool. I'm excited. I'm gonna watch it once it's out. And if it's on YouTube, YouTube is, by the way, everywhere. It's the same in Germany.
So, and I will actually say it right now, and I will hold myself to this, and this is a promise. I will actually show it to you before it's released and finished, because I would love to hear what you guys think of it before I release it, because I will definitely want to be testing it out and stuff. And I will warn you that the initial cut of this thing, that if the director's cut, if you want to call it that, is going to be like really long. I mean, it's going to be 2 hours, maybe even 3. It's a big thing. So, but yeah, I'm working on it every day, and I'm really excited about it. So yeah.
That's awesome. I'm honored that we will be allowed to see it before it comes out, and we will love to give you feedback for sure.
Yes, thank you.
So before we slowly close this episode out, I gotta ask you a final question, because, like I said, we're talking about horror movies, about gore, about violence, and we were talking about we have a few questions that we are asking ourselves, and one of those questions and that it's really an open question, but I just want to throw it out there, because one of the questions we always ask about: who does these kind of movies? What kind of person gets the idea to do these kind of fucked up, gory movies? So what I want to ask you is, Greg, are you a serial killer and really just a crazy person?
I am not, and look, if it came out that whoever Dahmer was making crazy gonzo comedy horror movies, who knows? Maybe we'd all think a little differently. No, I'm joking about that. But no, I don't know. I'm definitely not any kind of. I'm the least violent guy there ever was, and no, that's a funny question. No, but no, I promise I'm Scout's honor. I'm not a serial killer. Or anything like that, but
because then I would also have problems giving you the address to send the DVDs to. So I'm glad you're not. Okay. Yeah, it was mostly a joke, but yeah, because what I found out so far, we're actually trying with this podcast to learn something new with every episode we do, and so this question that always comes up, if you hear the people talk about gory movies, is always who even thinks of that kind of shit, and for the most part, what I found out is mostly the most normal people are the people that you would least expect to make these kind of things. I mean, Wes Craven, who made things like Nightmare on Elm Street, was also a college professor. So it's always these, and so yeah. But I think you answered that pretty well. You're not a serial killer. And mostly, yeah, it's often that you hear that those people are the least kind of evil people out there. So. Thank you so much for doing this interview with us, and we're almost at 2 hours now. So thank you very much for being here. And so, if people want to know more about you, if people want to follow you and find out what kind of music do you listen to comes out, where can people find you?
I have a website. It's just my name, gregdeliso.com. And I really, Instagram and Facebook are the two social media that I use. Matthew the Collie is my dog, and that's my Instagram name. And then you can just look up my name on Facebook. I'm sure I'll come up. And I'm really accessible on each of those, so I'm sure I could. I don't. You guys have Instagram in Germany or Facebook, or is it a whole different?
we have those. Yeah, and I'm actually I didn't look you up yet, but I'm gonna follow you.
Yeah, please. I'll follow you on Instagram. Follow your stuff back. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much once again for being on the episode, and. Yeah, I think I'm going to close this episode right now. If you want to know more about Greg, we also put everything he just said about the links where you can find him in our footnotes of the episode, so you can just go there and follow him. And also, if you can find Hectic Knife anywhere, you need to check it out because it's great. And the same with Psycho Ape. And if you know me personally, I'm gonna own a version pretty soon, and I'm gonna lend it to you, or you just buy it yourself, because that's how you really help the filmmakers. And thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all next week.